If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Law by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the masquerade. In this celebratory episode, I shall be discussing the good and bad and the highs and lows of Year 4 of the Law by Night podcast, as well as a general chat about one's opinions on the world of darkness. In preparation for writing for this script, I looked back at the previous yearly anniversary episodes, and it is honestly astonishing just how far I have come. I was celebrating 1,000 subscribers within the first 8 months of the podcast's debut. Now I celebrate 10,000, and as of the recording of this, we're very nearly at 11,000. We may actually get to 11,000 by the time this airs, because I record these a month in advance. Anyway, the podcast would enter the top 5% of podcasts listened to in the second year when people began to take notice. The height of the pandemic gave a lot of free time to the community to sit down and absorb the dank lore. This number has now reached the top 2%, despite the fact I haven't uploaded anything in the traditional podcast streaming places in almost a year from now. It is also during this 2-year period that the numerical milestones and accolades really began to overwhelm me, but it made me feel welcomed and accepted into this VTM community. All the while, I was purchasing V5 books and older material, really engrossing myself into the interesting and often controversial world of darkness. Then Year 3 happened. The change of the guard, as it were, showed a noticeable dramatic shift in the direction of the publishing and developing of the World of Darkness books. I was angry but more disappointed at the lack of care in their products, abandoning their values and trying to mimic Dungeons & Dragons with their books of monsters and powers aimed for no one in particular, and their hilarious cash grab attempt with Bloodhunt, which has since died and not receiving any more online updates. Who knows, it may have shut down entirely by the time this episode goes live. Future lore can tell us that. Well, as of the recording of this episode, the 29th of October 2023 in the year of our Lord Talos, Bloodhunt is still online and people are still using it, and still no future updates to report on. I did, however, hope these were little blunders and maybe they would get things back on track, and oh boy was I so fucking wrong. The last year has had World of Darkness entrench itself in some of the most racist, transphobic, and ultimately fascist ideologies I have seen in tabletop role-playing books to date. That's going to be quite difficult for people to stomach for a lot of reasons, but this is something that needs to be addressed and highlighted. I have always presented the most up-to-date information regarding the setting of the World of Darkness, and this, I feel, is part of that, and I take it upon myself to front all the hate from the racists in chat and whatever BS I get from World of Darkness and some of their authors to document all of this, which I will focus on this episode, as well as the bad changes they have made to their overall metaplot direction, as that's kind of important as well. I will end on some of the more positive things that have happened to me specifically this year and to the future of the channel, so stick around to the end. And if I was not clear, there are many trigger warnings and many insensitive writings and topics in the 5th edition universe, so consider thee warned. It should be reminded that White Wolf Publishing does not exist anymore. White Wolf Publishing were the authors of the V5 core book and owned by Paradox Interactive, but the latter absolved the former, so Paradox absolved White Wolf, following the first release of the V5 Cameron source book. In it, the book described the turmoil in Czechia, a pressure cooker of Sharia rage and Islamic anger, to quote the book, and its writers, which include the company's then lead storyteller Martin Eriksson and editor-in-chief Karim Morma, attack on the LGBTQ community for content. I will note that Eriksson no longer works for World of Darkness. Karim, however, still does, and is someone that is going to appear much later in this episode. Paradox's Vice President of Business Development, Shams Georgiangi, which I've probably butchered horrendously, in a statement wrote, "The results were a chapter that dealt with a real-world ongoing tragedy in a crude and disrespectful way. We should have identified this either during the creative process or in editing. This did not happen, and for this, we apologise. This wasn't the only issue with the initial release, as the core book itself received heavy criticism for its write-up on the Bruja, implying that Nazis and neo-Nazis were welcome concepts. White Wolf, when it still existed, responded and denied such claims, as any decent company would, but the damage was done. Polygon covered these issues with fuller quotes and context, which I will provide in the description below for you to read. I will be saying that a lot this episode. The V5 books would be written in-house from there, with Onyx Path releasing its books, Chicago by Night, Let the Streets Run Red, Chicago Folios, Cult of the Blood Gods, Children of the Blood, Trails of Ash and Bone, and Forbidden Religions. The only hate crime I'm aware of found between these books was in Chicago by Night, where a trans vampire was referred to by their dead name, their name before their transition, which was addressed, which, to my understanding, was a mistake and apologised for very quickly. Besides this, the Onyx Path V5 books were well received by fans as faithful extensions of the metaplot and setting, which in turn made it stand out when put against the other V5 books at the time, which felt and continued to feel like glorified gothic coffee table magazine hybrids. They looked and read differently, which made the V5 reading experience just a little odd. March towards November 2020, World of Darkness is now very much a subsidiary of Paradox, making it much as a brand as well as an in-game universe. All future supplements would happen in-house, and they would be partnered up with Renegade Game Studios who would publish future books. To celebrate this new partnership and prove just how awesome this new change in direction would be, World of Darkness HQ released their V5 companion guide, whose main attraction was the 3 new clans, who were not really new at all, but 3 new clans the fans would not stop nagging World of Darkness HQ to put in V5. The existence of this book confused many people, myself included, but said complaints and legitimate criticisms were all shut down with the claims that they were all haters and V20 power gamers, further alienating fans. To add to this was the constant stream of video games to appeal to those young hip kids that didn't care about TTRPGs too much. Now, don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with this, particularly with how I got into VTM and how I assume many of you listeners did, but what is out there currently, like the rest of the V5 written material, has been terribly mixed. The visual novels set in New York were fantastic. Earthblood, not well received, with one article praising it for being the latest Xbox 360 game that year, which was hilarious as it was embarrassing. Not as much as one of the community managers desperately and pathetically clinging onto this little bit of praise. As for Swan Song, from my sources, continues to be an average glitchy mess. Of course, quality is subjective. You may actually enjoy the V5 companion or the V5 Sabbat book, for which I give you my thoughts and prayers. Jokes aside, let's remind ourselves what is being sold within that book in particular, as that caused quite a bit of controversy. The World of Darkness is a game setting with a long-established metaplot with a storyline that starts in Vampire the Masquerade, with Cain stoning his brother to the rumours of Gehenna, which wrapped everything up in a little bow at the end of the revised edition line, but fans didn't want it to end, so the developers brought things back and carried on with the story. Of course, things will get messy once you unravel said bow, but that is what fans ultimately wanted. This is why it is baffling to me that with each release of the V5 line, the developers and Paradox are taking greater steps to distance themselves from the lore, even to go as to tweet how metaplot and canon doesn't matter, and how lore actually prohibits newer players getting into the World of Darkness. And this isn't just a narrative encouraged by some of the writers either, but something I've seen time and time again on forums and social media amongst fans. This, I believe, is total undiluted horsepiss. Lore is the very reason we play TTRPGs, to enter realms of one person's imagination, creating characters with backstories so in-depth and convoluted that you could write a thesis on just their childhood years. The lore of games captures imaginations, whether you like it or not. Metaplot provides a foundation for players and STs or games masters to nurture their stories. Creating interesting lore with deeply developed history is not gatekeeping. Players gatekeep, not lore. And if your game is known for its intricate lore and you want to eradicate gatekeeping in your players, tackle the toxicity in your player base, not eradicate lore. The solution to this is laughably simple. write with fewer meaningful books, both in content and quality for the fans. Now, the release of the Sabbat book, as hinted at moments ago, upset the majority of the fan base, eradicating 30 years of lore and progression, shoving them in a storyteller-only book as people wanted to explore darker descents of vampires' concepts of humanity via the Sabbat. But when fans criticised the antagonistic-only Sabbat, it felt that World of Darkness HQ and Renegade went "fuck you, play a different version of vampire if you want more monstrous, antagonistic vampires that doesn't work well too with our current vampire game." In other words, legacy editions of VTM appeal to power gamers and their deranged power fantasies, which has never ever been the case. V5, by this misguided response, implies you should play morally confused kindred, not those rapscallion Sabbat K-Knights. Now, it is true that V5 focuses more on the humanity and touchstones idea than previous versions of Vampire, and I adore this to bits. What the game truly is, in my totally biased opinion, is the descent to savagery, having your life torn from you as you come to terms with this new existence in a heavy world of politics and century-old conflicts, which makes a perfect example of V5 storytelling. Now, am I actually talking about the Sabbat, or am I talking about the Camarilla? To me, they are two sides of the same bloody coin and ultimately make up the Vampire the Masquerade experience. Now, if you are curious to read the exchange I speak of, I will leave a link to the interesting Twitter thread between disheartened fans and the community manager in the description below. This interaction is stupefyingly hypocritical when you consider the existence of Bloodhunt, a baffling tone-deaf battle royale game where you leap from rooftop to rooftop, 360 no-scoping vampires and diabolizing your enemies for extra points, both in-game and credibility. It is the very antithesis of Vampire the Masquerade. It lacks meaningful emotional content, much contrary to the TTRPG it is inspired from, existing only to chase off a bloated and saturated video game trend. But because it is an officially licensed VTM game, none of that matters. It's okay to commit mass murder and diabolize vampires in the middle of the street, but don't you dare suggest any of those nasty things in the TTRPG, at least not in V5. Go and play one of those greener, smellier legacy editions. Of course, the same community manager sings on the rooftops how amazing of a game it is, which is probably due to their competitive gaming background that allows them to be incredibly good with these sorts of games, rather than the game itself being half decent. But all of this is purely subjective at the end of the day, deviating somewhat from the original intention of the episode, though definitely worth noting all the same once more. The mentioning of the community manager, who I shall now reveal is Outstar, is also important because of the poor treatment of the World of Darkness community in Brazil, who have always been incredibly supportive of both World of Darkness and the Law by Night podcast, I just have to say. Thank you very much. On the 16th of March 2022, Renegade released the Second Inquisition book for version 5 setting of the World of Darkness as a PDF and in hardback on the 6th of April. Now, if that has puzzled you, that is because World of Darkness HQ don't refer to their product as 5th edition, but version 5, a piece of information that, like so many other pieces of important news, is only conveyed through the World of Darkness Discord, a semi-public/private space, not in a more professional and open setting like Twitter or their own website. Similar comments regarding the lore were also made how Legacy Edition is not canon, despite older books such as Beckett's Jihad Diary being mentioned in V5 books as something for players to read. But I digress. Upon the release of the SI book, it received criticism for two things. The first was the coronavirus joke in the opening story of the book, and more importantly, the insensitive representation of the BOEs in Brazil and their culture as a whole. To draw one example, on page 37 of the Second Inquisition book, it states that, despite a rough history of Brazilian repression of their beliefs and practices, a mutual understanding has surfaced where some Brazilian candomblé and Umbanda, which I'm really sorry if I've mispronounced, practitioners bless weapons, work rituals and protect their BOES's colleagues, a force that has long been their own historic enemies. The problem is that the BOEs, despite being fictional, draws from Brazil's military police and their special operations unit, the BOPE, which are organizations of mostly Christian or evangelical faith that routinely destroy candomblé and Umbanda places of worship and kill its practitioners. The sheer concept that they would ever work together, having a mutual understanding, undermines centuries of genocidal practices against African Brazilian religions and black people as a whole, especially because mutual enemies implies they ever fought back when it has always been very much a one-sided violence or genocide. This may seem minor to some, but BOPE has a very real history of systematic murder and rape of black populations in and out of the favelas, torturing young kids in front of their mothers and throwing grenades out of helicopters inside crowded communities of innocent people. It is systematic genocide and erasure of an entire culture, and depicting Umbanda and candomblé as enemies that eventually found common ground is, for lack of a better phrase, fucking infuriating. Renegade would change this, albeit without a public statement, which I will discuss in a moment. Some within the Brazilian community would write an open letter to the V5 developer team via a Twitter thread, which I will leave in the description below. The one who called it a World of Darkness attention first, from my understanding, was Alessa Torres, who, I'm sorry if I got your name wrong there, formerly known as Alessa Malkavian online, a former community ambassador for the Brazilian World of Darkness community. I say former because she too would be presenting her own Twitter thread on xenophobic and racist actions against Latinos, this time focusing on Outstar and the omission of Paradox Interactive. This statement exists in 3 different forms. The first of these is an article by her on rederpg.com, uploaded on the 26th of October 2022, but is through her blog, Twitter thread, and spaces recorded on the 8th of November 2022 that went viral, for lack of a better phrase. I have left links to these in the descriptions below, but I will summarise what happened now. Since it opened its doors in 2020, Alessa received multiple complaints from Latin American users of the World of Darkness Discord that were receiving different treatment from European users, with some allegedly being banned for speaking Brazilian Portuguese or Spanish languages, even though the encouraged language on the official World of Darkness Discord was English. The solution from Outstar is to create a separate World of Darkness Latin American server. This would, whether by design or unfortunate ignorance or happenstance, dip into racial segregation. Outstar's reasoning was that it was to resolve the issue of needing to moderate in multiple languages. Alessa would dispute this by informing Outstar of the existence of Discord bots to aid in this, as she had these sort of things set up in the World of Darkness Latin American server. Then the SI book was released and the aforementioned content was highlighted by the Latin American community. Renegade intended on releasing an apology, but it was Outstar who blocked the apology from being put on the official World of Darkness website, and it had only been released on the World of Darkness Latin American spaces instead. Said community and spaces would offer their own direct feedback and suggestions on how to fix these issues, with translations from Alessa, but these were blocked by Outstar, whose reasoning was, and I quote, "weren't susceptible to a white European person's thinking about my, Torres' culture." Paradox would then tell Alessa in a following conversation that Paradox, would rather focus on American and European markets, but didn't consider Latin American ones to be profitable, even after Alessa would provide her own data and evidence of the viability of the Latin American market. Alessa would be let go as community ambassador, and the replacement being a personal friend of Outstar's, allegedly. And I feel that it's very important to highlight that this is just allegations. Despite all these writings and recordings, Alessa hasn't actually provided any written or photographic evidence that these things happened. Neither has Outstar actually put claims against this, and neither has World of Darkness, and I'm sure both sides have screenshots or whatever to prove the other one guilty, but until something a bit more substantial comes through, this is, at the end of the day, all just allegations, which isn't just saying that the situation isn't great either. And it may not be Outstar's fault that she may only be a messenger for the decisions made by Paradox, which isn't exactly better. She is still choosing to work there despite all of this. Outstar in particular has demonstrated on multiple occasions that her opinion dominates all. For a more recent example in this, when fans called out World of Darkness which transphobic content found in the alternate Bane for the Ravnos in the V5 Players Guide, mostly in the World of Darkness Discord, she responded that she checked it with some trans friends who said it was fine, rather than seeking professional consultants. The said fans also had to endure countless typos, grammatical errors, formatting and balancing issues as they presented a tsunami of feedback regarding the PDF release of the Player's Guide. In other words, they served as beta testers for the book. This would be more acceptable in a Kickstarter environment, but not when its storefront presents a book as a fully released product, that you pre-order the physical book, and then it falsely advertises that you get the PDF for free. It is also likely that some of the art was produced by AI, which was something I asked directly to another member of World of Darkness HQ. I have yet to receive my answer 4 months on. On a more personal level, when I was releasing my first homebrew, the Kindred Wheelchair, I politely asked if I could use the bi-weekly World of Darkness news stream to promote it. This was declined as she claimed other creators would be mad that World of Darkness essentially cherry-picked its creators and not provide a means for everyone to show off their content. Now, whilst I understood the thought process, I was quite upset by this all the same, but I respected that, it made sense. But what would then happen is that World of Darkness would actually do just that and would choose certain individuals analysing LA by Night episodes and one of the V5 Sabat book authors pushing his own V5 Sabat homebrew, which is still grossly transphobic. With the Vamptober 2022 thing that happened in October that year, I criticised on Twitter how inaccessible the various PDF and PNG resources were, how messy and disorganised they were, and how those who were blind or visually impaired were not able to participate with this. The response? Just zoom in. Which helps absolutely no one if they can't physically see it and they relied on screen readers to read. What it boiled down to was that it was a form of resource that helped Outstar, who was the creator of such documents, and then would release it as official work. She did say more accessible versions would come in a month's time, but they never did. Although I will highlight and address that this year, 2023, that has been improved upon ever so slightly. The last thing I wish to address is the previews and teasers of Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition, which are some of the more recent and more concerning issues as of the writing of this script, the 24th of July 2023, and the recording of the episode, the 29th of October 2023. After the lukewarm reception of Hunter the Reckoning, a franchise no one asked for as defined by the results of a poll on World of Darkness Twitter I can no longer find, fans have been excited for Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition, the biggest game in the World of Darkness after Vampire. Originally going to be developed by Hunters Entertainment, this was meant to be the version of Werewolf the Apocalypse that was going to address the cultural insensitivities, appropriation and racism ingrained in the original properties, making it culturally neutral. Whilst this may have been true to begin with, this did not last very long. When Paradox decided to make everything in-house, they sacked the entire team writing on it, which I should mention included James Zambrano, a Native American person, B. Dave Walters, who is black, Alessa Teague, who is Jewish, and Kat Evans, who is trans-masculine. The replacements were primarily white men. When questioned, World of Darkness would state that the First Nation elders were the consultants. When asked which nations and which elders, there was no response. This sets the tone for the issues surrounding what we have seen with the previews posted on social media, and I am sure future lore will speak up now if anything else happened in the 4 months between the writing and the recording of this episode. The only thing that's really worth of note here that I would consider partly controversial is that there was a story module released for free by Renegade for Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition that painted the Getter Fenris, or the Cult of Fenris, as they're now called here, as the antagonists, and they are obviously being pushed as the more fanatical Nazi regime, because that's apparently what they've always been, even though that's not always been the case. Now, I'm not going to go into this too much here, but again, you'll find a link in the description below regarding an interview with one of the authors, another World of Darkness author, and a bunch of gamers who's the host of the interview, talking about all the different aspects of Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition. It's about 3 hours long, but it's really, really vital if you want to get a good picture about the changes and what's good and what's bad. And again, description in the link below. Now, back to the intended episode. On the 27th of April 2023, the preview of the Glasswalkers tribe in Werewolf the 5th edition lifted the likeliness of Teomoko Maui activist Tammy Iti, who had nothing to do with Werewolf at all, and all World of Darkness had to do was dial back and do some PR cleanup, given the circumstances. This is obviously an incredibly inappropriate and racist thing for the Swedish company to do. Teimeko, also known as Moko, is a sacred and cultural tradition that is deeply valued. It is used to signify the transition into manhood, social standing and personal power, or mana. The Maui community views the use of replication of Moko by non-Maui as a contentious issue due to these reasons. 2 days following this tweet, the 29th of April 2023, World of Darkness would remove the preview and state they would look into it, with them releasing their apology tweet the 2nd of May, 3 days later, assuring the fans that this was a blunder and that they aimed to release the book in August, which was a shit time to advertise the book, honestly. But rather than delay it and replace the artist, Krzysztof Bajnowski, whose name I always get wrong, they would continue to release the previews, some of the other tribes. Because of such likeliness being traced or stolen, every preview went under similar inspections by certain fans, myself included, with the unveiling of the Ghost Council tribe, one of the newer tribes, and I'm putting that in apostrophes here. It did not take the fans of Twitter, myself included, very long to point out that every single one of the examples given was someone existing traced over, stealing their likeliness and cultures for quick Eurocentric monetary gain. Again, I've put links in the description below, as well as 2 vlogs I did highlighting this issue. Al Bundy can also be seen traced with the face of Colonel fucking Sanders in a preview shared on the 24th of June 2023, which is also obtainable from a link in the description below. The second part of the Werewolf controversy is honestly the catalyst for the direction of this episode. It involves James Zambrano, who I previously mentioned worked on the original lineup for Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition, and his treatment at Paradox under the guise of Kareem Morma. On the 21st of July 2023, they, James, released an article on their Patreon page detailing the cultural theft, anti-indigeneity in the gaming industry, and the incredibly racist and fascist tones regarding the extermination of Native American tribes in the World of Darkness setting. I will point out that this is my summary in my words, not James's. Their Patreon post is found in the description below. It is a long one, but I urge you to read it. If you read any of these, please read the posts by Alessa and James. Often in the community we like to joke and tease White Wolf publishing of the 90s and early noughties on how edgy and offensive they were. We often ask, what were they thinking when we read Kindred of the East, Ebony Kingdom, the constant comparisons Ravnos have to the remaining cultures and people, and so forth. These are all very true and they should be criticised, but these are problems that are continuing with old, lazy traditions today. Paradox is making money off of racism, transphobia, and bigotry of their own creation. They are taking advantage of BIPOC writers and activists and their own ambassadors. They are erasing identities and whitewashing everything to a default neutral, to end quote, that is noticeably Eurocentric, and making use of PR to make themselves look better while still propagating the things they dissolved what was left of with White Wolf over. You only need to look at the state of the World of Darkness Discord, which thrives off blowing hot air up the team's arsehole. Perfectionists of ass kissing, with their only champions being the trio that make up the human centipede. Criticism is shot down as slander, or a reply from a community manager saying it's okay cause they checked it with a friend, so it must be okay. Outstar and Paradox put their culture of Eurocentric and English speaker dominance over other cultures and communities in the broader World of Darkness. They are not doing better. Honestly, I don't think they're even trying anymore. All they have to do is please the whales and Nazis in their Discord. What you do with all this information is down to you, but I ask you to stop and truly reflect upon everything I just said and the various links in the description, and ask whether you feel okay supporting this company financially with the newer releases. I am very fortunate that I have a platform as large as mine where I'm able to reach out to the community like this. I am very grateful for the actual play opportunities I've received and the friendships I have had with certain groups and developers, primarily Onyx Path Publishing, and of course there are others, you know who you are. I am eternally thankful for the love and support the fans and my community have for what I do and how I go about doing it, whether it's in the form of a lore dive, character creation, book review, and the rest of the usual content, or the newer walk and talk vlogs and the solo TTRPG stuff, which is terribly lacking and want to rectify in the future. I feel so lucky to have a group of amazing friends, and most importantly my beautiful partner Rika, who is not only my best friend but a powerful soulmate that makes me feel like the luckiest man alive. They are perfect to me as I am for them, and couldn't be happy to be madly in love with this gorgeous ball of German perfection. I hope that the future brings happiness to us both, my friends and acquaintances. I hope to do more solo actual plays, and if I do any actual plays, they're on my terms with like zero stress. I hope to run more games at my local game store and conventions and do more professional games mastering. I also have some vampire guides coming up in the new year, as well as Demon the Fallen and Werewolf the Apocalypse, which I hope everyone enjoys because I'm very excited for people to hear and see those, and me to write them. But to give one final thanks, I am, in a strange way, grateful for the existence of World of Darkness. Without it, I wouldn't have discovered tabletop role-playing games or thought about pursuing any form of podcast or content creation. I wouldn't have Rika, that's for sure. But loving something is also knowing, understanding, and criticizing its flaws, which is why I take my time out of my day to talk about these increasingly number of flaws, as none of my other content creator contemporaries are addressing these issues like I am. If it was D&D, sure, you'd be all over this like a hot fucking rash. World of Darkness, no one gives a fuck. Regarding World of Darkness, the moaning is left for Twitter and other forum sites for some reason. I don't agree with that, nor do I agree that the rants like this benefit the company at present because they have their fingers stuck in their ears going la 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 la. My lore episodes might, but I don't think World of Darkness is ready to have that conversation. They are busy trying to stomp out the lore, I mean Vampire Arcana, and piss on your head and tell you it's raining. To be kept updated, follow the Lore by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.